before we continue with today's video, I would like to take a moment to make an apology to you guys. And all of this is going to be structured on timestamps, so that if you do not care of sitting and listening through my lame apology, then you're more than welcome to just skip to whichever part of the video it is more interesting to you. The thing is that this is just a re-upload of the video that I posted yesterday that had a huge mistake. And it was a very bad mistake. Not that that build is not going to work. Yes, it is still going to work. It was being showcased on itself on screen. You were being able to see that the build actually did work as a solo, but it could be much more powerful than it was being showcased as in paper. I had the idea. The thing is that I didn't test it enough. I always test my builds. I always play my fair amounts of gameplay before I actually post them. And since I did that, I thought that the build was actually doing something that it wasn't doing. And the video had already been seen by 15,000 people, so I really hope that those 15,000 people that watched that video and that wanted a build that they could make and they could try, because I know that a lot of people does try the builds that I post right here in the channel. I hope that you find your way in here. I want to humbly make an apology to you, because that build is potentially going to be much more of a hindrance than the reward that you are going to get from that build. So yeah, like I said, I'm truly sorry about that. Now, I am also going to take a moment right here to address some of the concerns that the people had on different aspects of this game. Thanks to that, I'm going to tweak a little bit this video a little bit more for it to be more powerful, broken than it used to be, and also to give you a better idea, thanks to those tweaks that we are making, give you an idea of what you should be getting on the first act of the game, on the second act of the game, the items that you are going to need on those acts, what are you going to get in return for these builds, because yes, this is going to be a very powerful build. It's going to be broken from the very start of the game because of some aspects that we are going to have right here, and also it's going to just keep becoming more powerful and powerful as you progress through the game. So while I do have endgame items right here, this build is going to serve you as a whole entire playthrough. So yeah, that being said, let's begin with character creation. We're going to be fighter. We're going to have our great weapon fighting right here, because we're going to be wielding a two-hander. And then our ability scores, this was the first mistake that I made. I made the mistake, I was tweaking the points right here, and I think that I left something like this. I can't remember it very well. I left two numbers, uneven numbers here. That was very dumb on my side. I never do that. It was just a little mistake that we are going to be correcting right here. Your main focus is going to be strength, and then the second focus is going to be constitution. We are going to be needing quite a lot of constitution to sustain concentration, and then we're going to pump up dexterity to have a little bit more of initiative. This is the mistake that I had. This is how I had the stats, and no, you shouldn't do that. The stats should always be on even numbers, like for example right here. I don't want to have the negative saving throw on wisdom. I would very much rather to have it in charisma. So this is how you are looking. This is how your build is going to have the stats. We are going to respec these stats once you enter the Act 3 of the game, but once we get to that point, I will show you what we are going to be doing and why are we going to be doing that. But we need quite a lot of constitution in the early stages of the game to sustain concentration, because we are going to be using quite a lot of concentration. Still, the enemy is never going to be able to hit us. Never, and I mean never. Even much more for the tweaks and changes that we are going to be making on the itemization section of the builds. Nothing really interesting is going to happen at level 2, you're just going to get action search, but at level 3 you are going to be able to choose the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight is going to give you access to spells, although, like I said on the previous video, these are not important. The only thing that it is going to be important is going to be shield. And like I said on the previous on the previous video yesterday, shield is a balanced thing. Shield is used for spellcasters that not have that high armor class and they need a little bit of an edge. So let's say for example that your mage or your sorcerer has like 13 armor class thanks to dexterity. you increase that to 18, which is something of a balance. But with this guy that we have like 21 armor class, which is actually quite high, you increase this thing to 26 thanks to this thing, so it just breaks your character a little bit more. And also when you have a hasted character, you get +2 to armor class, that's 28. If you add a shield of fate with your cleric to this character, that's a +30, and that is going to virtually make impossible for the enemy to land hits on you. That is why it is so powerful to have shields on your character. As for the rest of the spells, it is not going to be important, we're not going to be using them, so it's up to your personal preference if you want to take utility spells. We're not going to be using spells for damage, although, like always, Magic Missile is an amazing spell because we don't need intelligence as an attack roll to deal damage with this thing, because it's always guaranteed, so that is always nice. Level 4, we are going to receive our class feats. Again, like the spells are not going to be important, just pick whichever thing that you want right here. We're not going to be using spells with this character. The thing that we are going to be choosing at level 4 is going to be the Great Weapon Master to increase our damage, and thanks to some things that we are going to have access to. On the first act of the game, it's going to have to be a thing that you're going to be swapping back and forth, because you are going to receive a -5 in your attack roll, so that is going to be a bummer. But as soon as you get to the second act of the game, you are going to have access to a very powerful combo that we're going to discuss on the itemization section of the build, so that is actually going to be quite amazing. Level 5, you are just going to receive your bonus attack. Again, nothing interesting is going to happen right there. Fighters actually get new feats on level 6, which is something that not all of the classes have. Here is where we're going to start beginning to where we're going to begin to improve our strength, to have a little bit more of attack rolls and damage rolls and what have you. And then on level 7, we're not going to get anything interesting, it's just more spells, but here is where we're going to have access to darkness. Now darkness, you're not going to be able to use it right away, because it's going to require for you to have Devil Sights. We don't have Devil Sight because we're not multi-classing into a Warlock right here, but there's 2 items in the game that is going to allow us to use this thing, and we'll discuss those on the itemization section of the video. Just have in mind that at level 7 you're going to have access to your darkness. At level 8 you're going to have access to your Misty Step as well. And this is actually an amazing choice to take early on to be able to move around. We're going to have so many attacks that we want to have mobility on the battlefield as well, because we're going to be killing quite a lot of people, and since we are going to be killing quite a lot of people, we want to have mobility in the battlefield to jump to the next character that we want to kill next. And then on the ability improvement, we're going to have strength a little bit more to reach our maximum strength that we are going to have right now. And this is going to be like on the Act 2 of the game, so this is just the max damage that you can deal with your attack rolls. At level 10 you get an extra subclass feature, which is going to be the Eldritch Strike. And I also want to make a little note right here, and we're not going to be choosing the Eldritch Knight to be a fighter that is also going to be able to shoot fireballs from his fingertips. No, this is just to make our character more durable and more powerful and more broken. So this virtually is not going to do anything for us. At level 11 though, you are going to receive your class feature, which is going to be 1 more extra attack, meaning that you can attack 3 times on 1 turn, 6 times if you are a hasted character, 9 times if you use your action search, and then 10 times if you use the extra attack that you're going to have with your Great Weapon Master, which is a total of 10. That's another mistake that I did in the video yesterday. Someone pointed that out, so I'm very thankful to you, sir. Finally, at level 12, we are going to get access to our final feat, which is going to be Savage Attacker. And since we're mainly going to be doing melee damage, this is going to be a huge amount of damage that we are going to deal. Savage Attacker deals rolls your attack rolls, your damage rolls dices twice, and uses the highest result. So this is some kind of an advantage in your attack rolls, but instead is going to be on your damage roll. If your damage roll was too low, the game is going to be using the highest, meaning that you're always going to get the highest amount of damage possible out of your Eldritch Knight. Now, as soon as you start the Act 3 of the game, as soon as you get the amulet that we are going to be using on the itemization section of the builds that I am going to showcase you in a little while, as soon as you get that amulet, you should reallocate your stats, respec your character. So we're going to be dumping Constitution because we're going to be using the Constitution amulet, and instead we're going to be popping out a little bit more the Dexterity to have a little bit more of initiative, although not that that is going to be actually quite important. It is not going to be that much important because the enemy is never going to hit you, so initiative doesn't really matter, and we're not going to be using medium armor, so there's that. But the thing is that now you're going to have access to a little bit more of the saving throws that you have right here. I advise for you to have the highest saving throws right here on Intelligence and Wisdom because of how the game is built, and there's a lot of illiths that are going to have to make you go through Intelligence saving throws. And here, before you hate on me, we don't have anywhere else to place this point. We really don't. Maybe if you're building this... no, actually, now that I think about it, maybe if you could, if you're making this your main character and you want to play with the Lady Ethel, maybe you could increase your strength to 22, probably. But still, you're still going to have to make the concession. You're still going to have the necessity right here to have one uneven point in here that is not going to make anything. Also, I plan these builds for them to be used for companions, so that if you're using this as a main character, you can most certainly use Ethel to increase your strength to 18 right here. But then again, before you actually start shouting, min-maxing, and all that kind of stuff right here, do have in mind that this extra point that we have right here, we have it right there because we cannot change it. It's just the amount of ability points that we have access to, while we have the maximum amount of even points that we have right here. So there is indeed that. Now, in the itemization section of the builds, as for the weapon, endgame weapon, we are going to be using the Baldurs Giant Slayer, although as you level up, any two-handed weapon is going to be amazing. There's a whole bunch of amazing weapons as you level up. Also, I think that I got this thing on Act 2 of the game. There's also a bunch of different weapons that I have stashed on my chest. There's halberds that have force damage that you can purchase from vendor or steal from vendors. Any weapon that is going to have the highest damage possible, that is going to be amazing. As for the armor, you want the highest armor class possible that you have access to. When you are leveling up, there's an amazing armor that has 18 armor class and some amazing features on the Gearforge. So yeah, that is also quite amazing. We have the Helldusk boots. This guys gives you Hellcrawler to be able to move throughout the battlefield with a little bit more of easiness. But we also want these things to have Steadfast, which you cannot be prone or knocked down. And a cool thing that you could use as you are leveling up, it's going to be the Boots of Striding, which functions as the same way. Whenever you are concentrated, no one can knock you down, and you can get these things on the first act of the game. The only difference is that they are not going to have Hellcrawler, but still, it is going to be an item that you are going to have access on the first half of the game. As for the gloves, we are going to be using the Helldusk gloves, but as you're leveling up on the Act 2 of the game, these are going to give you a 1d6 fire damage. As you are leveling up, you can most certainly use the Dark Justiciar gauntlets, and they are going to add a 1d4 necrotic damage. It's not going to be as much, and they are not going to have as many things. They are not going to have the Rays of Fire, but they are obtainable on the Act 2 of the game. Then we're going to have the Cloak of Protection, just to have a little bit more of saving throws and for an armor class. As for the rings, we are going to be using the Killer's Sweetheart. And the Killer's Sweetheart is going to give you a critical hit on the mana. Now, the things that we are going to be swapping, depending on the axe that we are going to be on, it's going to be the Amulet of Greater Health. If you're on the second act of the game, you're going to have access to the Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet. On the first act of the game, you have access to the Broodmother's Revenge, which is going to give you a 1d6 poison damage whenever you are healed. So that is always actually quite amazing. and then when you reach the third act of the game, you are going to have the Amulet of Greater Health, which is why I told you that this is where you should respec your character to have a little bit more of saving throws on the rest of the stuff that you are going to have, because we're going to be dumping Constitution thanks to this bad boy that we have right here. Now, as soon as you enter the second act of the game, you're going to have access to the House of Healing, and you should be heading there ASAP. There's not going to be anything that is going to deter you. You should always make your way there to get this ring that you are seeing on the screen right now. And this ring basically gives you immunity to magical darkness, meaning that you can start using the magical darkness from the second act of the game, which is actually going to be quite amazing. As you reach the act 3 of the game, on the same place where you're going to get the Amulet of Greater Health, the Helldusk Gloves, the Helldusk Boots. This is just a set that you're going to get in one single place, and you can go get it as soon as you enter the Act 3 of the game. If you have the rest of the builds that I have posted here on the channel, it shouldn't be that much of a difficult fight, that boss fight that you are going to have right there. As a matter of fact, I soloed that guy with one of the builds that I posted here on the channel, so you should be good to go if you're using the builds of the channel. You're going to have the Helldusk Helmet. This is going to allow you to swap your ring, to have a little bit more of extra damage, and also to have a little bit more of saving throws against spells. So this is just basically going to give you sight on darkness, and then you can have the Strange Conduit ring to add 1d4 psychic damage whenever you have concentration, because of you're always going to be concentrated on something, on the darkness that you are going to have. So let's talk about how the build is going to work, what it is going to give you on the first act of the game, on the second act of the game, and the third act of the game. On the first act of the game, you're going to have a very durable, high damaging fighter that is going to have access to bonus attack, and it's also going to have access to magic shield that is going to make you that much more tankier. So at that point, you are a very, very durable and high damaging fighter. On the second act of the game, that's when the build is established, because at the second act of the game, you're going to have access to darkness, and also you're going to have access to the Everside ring. So on the second act of the game, you have everything that you need for the builds, because in the second act of the game, you can have quite a lot of attacks. You have your great attack from your Great Weapon Master, you have the darkness, you have the dark vision, magical dark vision, and also you have the shields. In the third act of the game, you are just that much more broken, because you are nearly unkillable thanks to the helmet that we are wearing. I forgot to mention that the helmet that we are wearing makes it so that the enemy cannot land critical hits on you. And the gist of everything is that darkness is already overpowered on itself. Mage Shield on a high armor character, it's already overpowered on itself. A Sorkadin with Mage Shield is virtually unkillable. A Sorkadin with Darkness and the Devil's Side, it's virtually unkillable. This guy has both of those, so you are that much more unkillable. If there are enemies with Devil's Side that are going to see you in the Act 2 of the game, you still have your Mage Shield, which is going to be making virtually impossible for them to, at the end of the day, hit you. And the only way that the enemy can hit you right now is if they land a critical hit, because your armor class is so high and the enemy has so much disadvantage against you that the only real way that the enemy is going to be able to deal damage to you is by a critical hit. And what do you know? Thanks to the helmet that we are wearing on the endgame, the enemy cannot land critical hits on your character. So yeah, it's also when it comes to damage, because of the setup that we have right here. If you cast your darkness and if you are concentrated and you have all of the setup that you are supposed to have right now, your damage attack rolls is going to be of a beautiful, amazing 27 to 45. Thanks to the Savage Attacker, we're always going to be leaning a little bit more on the 45 attack damage. And the thing is that you have 10 attacks. You have access to 10 attacks. And yeah, it is a very, very powerful and broken character. It is one thing that it almost feels like cheating. You can solo the entire game with this guy and it's just going to be a cake in the walk. So yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry for yesterday's stumble, but this should be fixed, and this is one of the strongest characters that I have ever built. I want to thank also to the people that pointed out those mistakes to me so that I could fix them and find a solution for you to also have access to a very broken, powerful character that you're going to be able to use on your playthrough. Anyways, if you like the content, a like and a pretty super appreciated. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, then what are you waiting for? And if no one has told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful, beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.